Victoria's construction industry has been told to down tools for the next 2 weeks in the wake of yesterday's violent protests in Melbourne's CBD. Crisis talks were held between the CFMEU and state government last night after the union's headquarters was badly damaged during hours of chaos.
The protesters were demonstrating against a vaccine mandate for that sector. The building industry says its COVID rules were too heavy-handed. But the Industrial Relations Minister says action needed to be taken following what he called widespread non-compliance. Let's go straight to reporter Stephanie Ferrier in Melbourne. Steph, good morning. Are there any concerns this morning violence might flare up again?
Good morning, Michael. Well, it certainly appears as if police are ramping up their preparations ahead of potential violence. Just a little while ago, we saw a long line of buses, police buses that are usually used for riot policers heading off from here. We also saw plenty of officers arriving here with their duffel bags and gear as well. And one was heard to remark that it's going to be a very big day today. So it's certainly hoped that we won't see a repeat of the ugly scenes yesterday at the CFMEU headquarters just 4 blocks away from here. That was when we saw the CFMEU's Secretary John Setka being pelted with milk cartons and bottles, windows being smashed at the headquarters by a strong crowd of about 500 construction workers and anti-vaccination protesters who were angry at the mandatory vaccination move for the construction industry. And John Setka ended up being holed up in his headquarters there until just before 9 o'clock last night when he left. Soon after that, the government slapped on this 2-week ban on construction sites across not just the Metro Melbourne area, but also the lockdown areas in Ballarat, Geelong, Surf Coast and Mitchell Shires as well. As you mentioned, Tim Pallas, the Industrial Relations Minister here, said that it was appalling behaviour that we have seen on site and on the streets of late, and that they needed to take decisive action after widespread non-compliance. But the unions involved in the building sector shot back. They have said that they always warned that this mandate by the government would lead to anger and division. And they say that this is a heavy-handed mandate by the Chief Health Officer, implemented with no notice, that has only served to drive many people towards the anti-vaccination movement. Now, just a short time ago, Rebecca Casson, who is the CEO of the Master Builders Association, spoke on News Breakfast, and she said that this is a really bitter blow and devastating to around 320,000 workers that work across this industry. It will also cost the state government around $450 million in revenue every day. And she says that at least this 2-week ban will mean that there will be absolutely no problem with all of these construction workers being able to at least get their first shot by October the 5th.
Let me be really clear, without mandatory vaccinations in our industry, it would have been extremely challenging for employers, particularly to get their employees back to work, and for our industry to fully reopening. And that's why, we've been talking about the mandatory vaccination with the state government. We do support that mandatory vaccination.
And finally, Steph, how serious is the concern about far-right extremism?
There are particular concerns about this and the possibility that they have infiltrated these protests. Just recently we had that big protest on Saturday as well, and Shane Patton, who is the Chief Commissioner, mentioned that there were concerns about the infiltration of far-right extremist groups. We've also even heard John Setka himself, while he was trying to placate the crowd, also wondering how many of the people there were actually union card-carrying members and not other protesters that had gone along for the ride there as well. But just a little while ago we heard from the president of the ACTU, Michelle O'Neill, and she definitely believes that while this whole protest behaviour should be called out as despicable behaviour, there were clearly other forces at play.
It was orchestrated by right-wing extremists, and that is something that we've seen the targeting of other blue-collar unions over the last few months. To have people try and use the union movement to cause division and spread misinformation is something that we will never accept, and we'll never be intimidated by these people. What we know is that what's in the best interest of workers is for everybody to try and get vaccinated as quickly as they can.
Now, there were also several arrests yesterday by police, but they haven't given the details or numbers of that as yet. And we are also expecting to see some construction workers back on site today, but the government says that that is just to allow maintenance or important work, just to be able to safely close down some of these sites properly.
Steph Ferrier in Melbourne, thank you.